Tonight we will examine concepts that may challenge your perception of the world around you. Strange creatures, chilling tales, and the occasional conspiracy. Here on our show, we will attempt to provide you with paranormal insight. Werewolves. They have haunted our dreams, our nightmares, and potentially our existence. The werewolf represents the darkest part of our soul, our animal selves, or it could be said that our ancients actually saw a creature like this, something that walked like a man, but when the time was right, it could transform into a beast. Every bit as savage, every bit as relentless as a wolf. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Paranormal Insight. I'm your host, Tim Sudano. This is our Halloween special. Welcome. As you may recall, in the last episode of the season, we had the cousins Zoe and Noah on from Mind Matter Mystery, and they were going over a few interesting questions I had posed, specifically about the diets of monsters, not only in our modern myth and legends like film and television, but in ancient literature and ancient stories even. And we came up with some very interesting answers, but we never got to werewolves. So we're going to discuss werewolves tonight. Zoe and Noah had a tragedy befall their family, so they will not be joining me for this particular segment. So it'll be me reading off the auxiliary screen sometimes. Our love and prayers go out to Zoe and Noah and their family. So let's discuss the werewolf. In my research, I discovered werewolves go quite a ways back in human history, all the way back to the days of Gilgamesh. And by the way, Gilgamesh was about 2100 BC or BCE, if you prefer. That's quite a long time ago. That's practically 5,000 years ago that the first written tale of a werewolf was introduced into the annals of the human experience. And I quote, earliest surviving example of man-to-wolf transformation is found in the Epic of Gilgamesh. However, the first werewolf as we know it, the modern werewolf, actually has its roots in ancient Greece and Rome, mostly through ethnographic, poetic, and philosophical texts. In 425 BC, or BCE if you prefer, Greek historian Herodotus described the Neri, a nomadic tribe of magical men who changed into wolf shapes for several days of the year. The Neri were from Scythia, a land now that is now part of Russia. Using wolf skins for warmth is not outside the realm of possibility for inhabitants of that area. It's pretty harsh out there. You're talking in the Siberian or sub-Siberian climates, so it gets pretty freaking cold. And it's, of course, you expect people to use wolf pelts. But the werewolf myth really comes into fruition around 380 BC, specifically in Arcadia, ancient Greece. Zeus was worshipped as Lycian Zeus, or Wolf Zeus, and this is told by the philosopher Plato. The story goes that he who tastes of the one bit of human entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably transformed into a wolf. Now, why on earth would anyone eat human entrails on purpose? These people were not starving. Arcadia was actually a well, very well off little town. I mean, I'm sure there were some poor people, but I don't think anyone ever resorted to cannibalism. But here's where it gets interesting. Not only is there literary evidence to back up what Socrates was telling, Plato was, Plato's and Socrates. I'm sorry, I kind of goofed that there. Not only were those two telling us this, but Pliny the Elder and Pausanias, I probably screwed up that name and I apologize, discuss werewolfism or lycanthropy. That's hard to say as well. There's a story surrounding both Pliny and Pausanias. Pausanias is his name. Talk about Demarcus, who was a young athlete out of Arcadia, and he was going to marathon to participate in the Olympic Games. And as part of the ritual to ensure he would win, he was fed a mince of human entrails, specifically from a young boy, as it's described here. And upon tasting this mince, he transformed into a wolf and was like this for 9 years. That's oddly specific and really a very long time and far outside the common trope of a full moon being the transforming a catalyst, the catalyst into transformation for a werewolf. 9 years. This guy's a wolf. He probably beat a lot of people at the game if they allowed wolves to participate in the Olympics, but I digress. Why was he fed mincemeat made with humans? Mixed. So they had animal meats and stuff like that, but they minced in the young boy as a garnish. I don't know. Apparently that was practiced. Human sacrifice on either a major scale, such as just killing this kid, or maybe sacrificing a finger, some flesh, or something along those lines into a mince for the athletes to eat, would give them this animalistic ability, enhance their abilities. So they're looking to enhance their abilities, and instead they at least one of them got turned into a werewolf. So what we face here in ancient Greece and before that in Gilgamesh, and unfortunately I couldn't really find a complete telling of the Gilgamesh story revolving around werewolves. What we're being told in ancient Greece is that for some reason Zeus punished Demarcus, and that's kind of seems like an incidental thing. It's like Zeus, for whatever reason, decides to punish this kid and no one else who's participating in this ritual. Now, there are other passages revolving around lycanthropy where humans are punished and turned into wolves. Plato's recollection of the Lycian Zeus, or the wolf Zeus, continues, or I should say not continues, but is expanded upon by later writers and philosophers, specifically Hyginus's Fabulae in Ovid's Metamorphoses. And they focus on the king Lycaon, ancient Greek king Lycaon, I believe the king of Arcadia. It goes on to say that the sons of Lycaon sacrificed their older brother. Now, this could have been the boy that was fed to Demarcus. There's really no connective tissue there. I'm kind of making that connection, I should warn you. And they invite Zeus down to enjoy this feast. Now, the idea is that Zeus would be somehow corrupted by eating this mince of meat and human meat. Zeus finds out about it. He gets royally ticked off. And the story goes that he hits him with a lightning bolt and kills all the sons of the king. And the king himself is transformed into a wolf. And that's from Hyginus's telling. Ovid's telling goes a little bit deeper, only a little bit. And I quote, "He tried to speak, but his voice broke into an echoing howl. His ravening soul infected his jaws. His murderous longings were turned on the cattle. He was still possessed by bloodlust. His garments were changed to a shaggy coat and his arms into legs. He was now transformed into a wolf." So the king, Lycaon, sorry, I'm probably royally mispronouncing that, was punished. My guess is that Demarcus, the athlete, also from Arcadia, is somehow tied into this. Like he was at the same feast, took off, turned into a wolf for 9 years, and then once Zeus showed up, it's like, yeah, have some of that, Zeus, and hits him with lightning bolt, and the story up to this point. So, but still, where do we come into werewolves eating hearts almost exclusively? Because that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's just a weird dietary thing. Zombies will eat it all. They'll eat the whole cow, so to speak, or whole buffalo or whatever. I'm sorry, I can't really think of a good example. But and vampires just drink blood. They'll leave a husk behind. Zombies eat it all, and werewolves eat only hearts. Oh, all right. If we fast forward through history up to about 1150 1150 AD ADE, we are in Europe at that time, specifically in Valais and Vaud of what is now Switzerland. There was actually werewolf trials alongside witch trials. They were separate, but werewolf accusations were minimal, but it was still on the same, I guess, level as far as hunting these monsters down. And the accusations were were pretty specific. It's like, that person is a werewolf. I saw him transform, or I saw a wolf come out of the forest, jump someone, maul them, chew on them, and then go back into the forest. And 5 minutes later, out walks Johann. Sorry, that's a German name. I'm kind of generalizing the area there. But it's interesting that there was actually werewolf trials, although we don't really hear about it that much. And I fast forward to this point because we actually get into a little bit of detail what people saw, because they well, what I'm reading now is Wikipedia, so it's a combination of a bunch of things. But in the transition between Europe, we actually go back in time to ancient Greece again. And here we have another storyteller whom Pliny the Elder actually he retells his story. Euthanese, Euanthes, excuse me again if I mess that up. And again, we talk about Arcadia, or he does. And I think we're talking about Demarcus here, because I quote, "Once a year, a man was chosen by lot, drawing straws, from the Anthus clan, or the Anthus's clan." Perhaps Demarcus, the athlete, was of that clan. Now, here's where the story changes completely, I might add. The chosen man was escorted to a marsh in the area where he hung his clothes on an oak tree, swam across the marsh, and emerged and transformed into a wolf, joining a pack for 9 years. Here we go. We're back to the 9 years again. During these 9 years, if he refrained from tasting human flesh, he returned to the same marsh, swam back, and recovered his previous human form, along with his clothes, hopefully, with 9 years added to his appearance. So as a wolf, he just kept aging like a human did. And when he came back, he was 9, 10 years older. Ovid, who we spoke about earlier, also relates a story about a man who roamed the woods from Arcadia in the form of a wolf. So Arcadia was kind of like the hotbed for werewolfism, for lycanthropy. Excuse me. We went from ancient Greece to the werewolf trials in what is now Switzerland, and back to ancient Greece, specifically all around Arcadia. So our stories getting passed around. Are we experiencing something as humans at that time where we are watching humans undergo a transformation? Quite possibly. I mean, I'm no, in today's science, I'd say no. Most science would reject that. There's there's frogs, for example. They can change. And what they do is if there's an imbalance in the population, they can actually physically switch their sex. So there's that. But that is an amphibian, a little bit closer to a reptile than humans are. Yet here we are talking about a very strong relation between man and dog or wolf. Now, is this a take on that? Are we looking at an idea that is spawned from the eons long relationship man has had with dogs? Possibly. Anthropologically, that makes a little more sense. However, with the disparate places that the werewolf legend pops up, especially in the ancient world, I'd be inclined to entertain the fact that there maybe was something happening with at least some humans, whether it was imbibing in human flesh or not, which doesn't, it makes you a little goofy. I mean, we know that today. If you eat human flesh on regularly, like breakfast, lunch, dinner kind of a thing, you'll start with the tremors and it'll affect your mind and you go really almost animalistic. So maybe that's what they were dealing with. Maybe there was excessive cannibalism in the old world, mostly for survival, perhaps for ritual practice. We don't know, but it affected people so much so that they were thought to become these animals or animalistic, so much so that they resembled more their dogs than people. That's just the theory. But we still haven't really answered the question. Yes, there's werewolves in ancient history. I mean, ancient history, some 5,000 years ago, we had the first recounting of werewolves. But why do they eat hearts in modern literature? And I think I found the answer. It was made up strictly for film and television. Uh, which is a little disappointing because I'd like to see that there was more to it than that. But I think I know where they got the idea. The idea comes from an American Werewolf in Paris, perhaps earlier Hammer films as well. But my research kind of starts at American Werewolf in Paris, where hearts are prevalent in the werewolf myth. Specifically, we have the lead character in that film, Andy, and his buddy, Brad, I think it is. Yeah. Well, Brad ends up getting killed, I think, by Andy either or by the werewolf that changed Andy. Andy becomes a werewolf. Brad's ghost shows up and explains to Andy what's going on. It has been 1,000 years since I've seen this film, so my direct memory on this is a little fuzzy, so I got to rely on plot descriptions. Brad then proceeds to explain to Andy that in order to cure himself of the condition he's in, lycanthropy, he has to eat the heart of the werewolf that bit him. And I think that's where pretty much everyone else after that said, "Oh, werewolves eat hearts." It's really kind of lame. The at least as far as modern storytelling and modern, literature, fiction, and most other werewolf stuff. Some later werewolf stuff has gotten a little bit more specific. I know Supernatural did the hearts eating wolves almost hearts eating wolves wolves eating hearts almost exclusively. That's the one of the latest versions of modern werewolf storytelling I could think of. But prior to that, werewolves, when they were transformed into wolves, behaved like wolves. They ate everything. They except the skeleton of a given beast or person. So up until very recently, werewolves were behaving like wolves do. They just get munching, munching, munching until they were full. A lot of animals do eat, carnivores specifically, do eat the insides first because they're full of all kinds of nutrients, whether they know that instinctively, which is my assumption, or not. That's what they go for, and they do eat the hearts and the lungs and the liver, and I think they stay away from the intestines because that's full of poop. Don't want that, but they'll eat everything else pretty much, and couple the diets of an actual wolf or a wolf pack who are going to take down a deer and munch, munch, munch until it's gone. And then you take a piece of folklore, or in this case, from what I can tell, invented folklore, specifically for a film plot, which is actually a cure for lycanthropy, eating the heart of the werewolf who turned you, is where we get this modern iteration of werewolves eat only hearts. So that's it. I know this is super short. Very sorry that it wasn't longer and more in depth. I would have loved to have a far more in-depth discussion with the cousins Zoe and Noah, but they were unable to join us this time because of a tragedy in their family. Once again, our love and prayers go out to them. And they will be on soon with me, probably next year. But that concludes this very short Halloween special on werewolves and why do they eat hearts. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you next time on Paranormal Insight for the Thanksgiving special. We delve into the healing power of sound. So join us next time for that. My name is Tim Sedano. This has been Paranormal Insight. You have a wonderful and safe Halloween. Take care.